So they moved to Bend, Oregon, and put Esther into a facility,
Yeah.
you know. And I guess he had this home there. In any event, they live in a house, a very nice house. I went there to visit there a couple of months ago, because I used to visit Esther, 2 or 3 times a year or something. And always stayed with her when I went to LA. She wouldn't have it any other way. And so she moved up there, and she's the only one of my generation that's left. So I call her periodically. She calls me, and she remembers all the stuff. But it's the current stuff she has trouble with. But anyway, so they all live there now, and apparently everybody's getting along really well, and so that's nice. Okay, so I was going to college. I went to Los Angeles City College, which is a 2-year school. I graduated high school in 1947, so I started into City College in music. Because I didn't know anything else. I mean, I didn't have any other, I was not an athlete or this or that. That was what I knew. So I went into music, and they had a band, a stage band, and concert band too. In fact, one year I was a student conductor of the concert band. Yeah, got a picture. In the meantime, that same year, the state of California opened a higher 2-year school, the upper 2 years. And so by the time I finished the 2 years at LA City College, I started right in to LA State College. But they didn't have a campus yet. They were using the same campus as LA City College. And so I stayed with the band, even though I was going to the upper school, the separate school. It was the same place, so I stayed, in the band. Well, about a year and a half into that, the teacher of the dance band mentioned my name to a band that was organizing to go on the road. And apparently they called him, because he was well known. The band had done marvelous things, very good band, he was a very talented guy. And so I was approached, do I want to go on the road with this band? The leader's name was Skinny Ennis. Skinny had done very well as a musician and as a band leader. When the war started, Bob Hope became a real big shot in terms of going overseas and entertaining the troops. Well, he brought a band with him. It was Skinny Ennis's band. That was before my time there, but I'm saying he was a hotshot. And so Skinny was very wealthy at that point. He'd done very well in his musical career. And so he had a home in Beverly Hills. So he would organize a band and go out on the road for 2 or 3 months. And then he'd come home and relax for a couple of months. He didn't have to work, but he chose to. So I went out with him on that tour, and we toured the country and so forth. And I played first trumpet in that band. We came back to LA after that, I don't know, 2 months, let's say. I don't remember exactly. And meantime, I had obviously already joined the union. I shouldn't say obviously. But I had to join the union to get into the band that was playing at the Hollywood Canteen, or I couldn't have played there. So when I came back from this tour with Skinny Ennis, I went to the musicians union and said, I'm looking for a job. And whoever I talked to said, oh, well, there's a band in Las Vegas that's just looking for a trumpet player. Okay. So arrangements were made, and I drove to Las Vegas, and I joined a band. The leader's name was Al Donahue. Al Donahue had been a very, very famous band leader in years gone by. And he was a lawyer, I think, or something, businessman of some type, but a violinist. And he and a guy that he teamed up with who played saxophone in the band, but was the manager. And they started booking bands to play on boats. In fact, I guess Al played on ships himself for a while. And then they started booking bands. And they had bands on different ships under the label of Al Donahue. And at one point in time, he was the biggest booker of bands in the world, Al Donahue. Anyway, so I joined Donahue's band in Las Vegas. That act that was on at the time was Liberace. And we played. I played there for maybe 3 weeks or something, because the acts were for 2 weeks, and I came in the middle of Liberace. So Liberace was one more week, and I think there was one other 2-week stint with somebody. And then the band moved to Reno. And we played in Reno at the Riverside Hotel. The first act was Dennis Day, a very famous singer, in those days, a very famous singer, who was a singer on the Jack Benny show, radio and television show. And that was 2 weeks. And then the entertainer, the head entertainer, was Frank Sinatra. And after that, I don't remember. Oh, I know. I think that was it. Al was ill. He had an ulcer during all this time. So they decided that when the Sinatra engagement was over, that they would disband the band, and Al would go and have an operation, and then a couple of months later, when he was better, they would put the band back together. So in the meantime, that was ending, so I got a job with a band across the street in the hotel. And I played with them. They only needed me for the next 2 weeks. They had a head act, big shot act. Band was from San Francisco, and it came in with one trumpet, but they needed 2 trumpets for this show. So I played with them for 2 weeks. Then I came back to Los Angeles. Well, I'm thinking that by this time, my dad had sold the house, because there was nobody there. So I began staying, when I was there, with Esther's mother, who lived upstairs from Esther and Nate. They had bought a up-and-down duplex. And Esther and Nate my brother lived on the first floor, and her mother and her father lived on the second floor. But they had a spare bedroom. So I was invited to stay there, and I did. And I went back to college. No, not quite yet. No, but when I was in LA, I stayed there. I went back on the road with Skinny Ennis for a while. I went back on the road with Al Donahue. They would go out for little periods of time and so forth and so on. And then a new band was starting up, led by Ray Sinatra, who was Frank's cousin, who was going to open up as a part of the opening of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. A new hotel at that time, big deal. I think it's already gone, but that's not. Anyway, so Ray Sinatra put together a band in LA, and we went. This must have been December of 1952. I know that. I'll explain why I know that. So we went in there, and the first act was Danny Thomas. Danny Thomas was not very well known at that time, but he became very well known. He had a TV show, he became a producer of TV shows, and he'd been a well-known entertainer in Chicago, where he was from. But it became his mission in life to support a hospital. Can't think of the name of it. May come to me. And he realized that the amount of money that he wanted to contribute to the hospital, he couldn't do working in Chicago in that nightclub. So he decided to go out onto the big time, so to speak. So the first job he had was in Las Vegas, Sands Hotel. So we worked with him for 2 weeks, and the second entertainer was Lena Horne. Going back to Danny Thomas, we played a couple of nights, and Danny got sick, had a sore throat, and couldn't hardly talk, much less sing or tell jokes. And so the word was put out, and many entertainers who were in town, vacationing or whatever, or night off maybe, hustled into the Sands Hotel, and we rehearsed that afternoon with a bunch of different people. And so we put the show on that night with those guys and let Danny have a night off. And then he came back to work. Anyway, it's kind of interesting. And I have pictures of that. Denise Darcell, Ray Anthony, Jimmy Durante, some others maybe. And then Lena Horne came in. Lena Horne was married to a piano player whose name was Lenny Hayton. Lenny had been the youngest conductor in the studios ever. At his young age, he was the youngest one, as they say. Okay, figure that, what I'm telling you. And very, very talented musician. And Lena, I believe, had been married previously. Lena was black, and Lenny was Jewish. And they started working together. Whatever happened, that they got together, and they said they want to get married. So they did, and his family considered him dead. They did what traditional Jews do when a family member dies. They tear their clothes, and they do all the things that Jewish people do when somebody dies. And they said, okay, he's dead, he's gone. And which is itself an interesting thing. Anyway, they had a good marriage. They seemed to have a good marriage. And he conducted the band, and occasionally he would play the piano for her if he felt like it. And during that run, at about that time, I decided I don't want this anymore. I've been traveling, and I've been living here and there and all the rest of it. And I said, this is not going to be the way I want to live my life. So I gave notice, and I moved back to Los Angeles and lived with Esther's mother, Bess, and went back to school. Well, I had finished 1.5 years of the senior college, so I had 6 months to go to get the 2 years in. So I went back to school, and because it was in the same place, I started playing with that dance band again, okay? Well, that band had been in a contest nationally for the best college dance band in the country. And they won. And so then the prize was to go to Capitol Records and cut 4 sides. And just at that time, the guy that played first trumpet got drafted. And so they were missing a first trumpet player. And so theoretically, he should have brought somebody in from City College. But he didn't have anybody. There was nobody to fill that chair. But I was like second, you know, I had some, you understand what I'm saying? It was second best kind of thing. So I went in and played with the band, and we did the records. There were some very good players in that band. One was Bob Florence, who wrote a lot of the stuff for the band, and he himself became very famous, very successful pianist. But he wore glasses like Coke bottles, almost blind. And when I did my senior recital, which I had to do that semester, he accompanied me. I did the Hindemith Piano Sonata and I don't know what else. And he was my accompanist. Another guy in the band was Lanny Morgan. And I'm talking, at this point, these people are 20 years old. You know what I'm saying? 18, 19, 20 years old. Lanny Morgan also became very well known, very famous, successful. One of the trombone players, can't think of his name, but he became the trombone player for Herb Alpert. The reason I try to say Alan is because Herb Alpert had an older brother that I used to work with. He was a drummer. And Dave Alpert didn't feel he was going to get anywhere with a Jewish name. So he changed his name to Alan. So he became Dave Allen. But his brother was Herb Alpert. So Dave Allen didn't succeed and Herb Alpert did. But Dave mentioned it. He said, I tried to make it, and I changed my name. He said he didn't change his name and he made it. Anyway.
That's funny.
So this trombone player became the trombone player with Herb Alpert's Tijuana Brass. And probably, Dick Hurwitz was another trumpet player in that band. He had gone to Roosevelt High, as had I, and his brother-in-law, Jules Chaikin, also in that band, had gone to Roosevelt High School, and probably Hollenbeck Junior High School. That's where we all went, that neighborhood. And Dick Hurwitz did very, very well as a trumpet player. Did a lot of touring and highly successful as a trumpet player. Jules, in the meantime, was an okay trumpet player. He was, in fact, he was with Stan Kenton for a while. And but he became a booker, a contractor, because when they're going to make a record or when they're going to do a show or something, the honchos hire somebody to get the musicians. A person called a contractor. Well, Jules became one of the highest. He became one of the busiest contractors in Los Angeles. He used to do the Academy Award shows. He'd hire the bands and stuff like that. I taught Jules for a while. I didn't remember it, but at some point in time when we got together again, he said, "You know, you used to give me lessons." I didn't even remember. But he studied at the music school just as I did. But I was like 2-3 years older than he was, so I was better, right? Sometime during those college years, he got a call to play in a show called Lady in the Dark. It was a musical show, and I don't remember when it was written, but written by Kurt Weill. Very good show, music. And they hired a small band and one trumpet, and Jules couldn't make it, so he gave me the job. So I played the job. The actress, singer, is a girl by the name of Marnie Nixon. Marnie became extremely well known. She used to be the voice in movies for movie stars that couldn't sing. Nice looking girl too, but they never used her in the movies that way. Her husband conducted. Her husband, at that time, was a fellow by the name of Ernest Gold. Ernest Gold wrote movie scores. Exodus, Ship of Fools, other movies. Very successful movie writer. So we had some good people doing that stuff. something else about that. Turn it off for a second. Oh, yeah, okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason I know that I left Vegas in December of '52 was because here I am now in January or so of '53, went back to college. And during that time, I met my wife. And we got married in June of 1953. So it's easy kind of to remember how that worked out. I'd gone to school, to the school place, to register, and she saw me there. It was casual, you know. We saw each other. I mean, maybe I saw her, maybe I didn't, but she saw me. And so a few days later, a couple days later, I decided I really ought to get a job, you know. So I went downtown to the Los Angeles Music Store, I guess it was called, and applied for a job. I didn't want a job, but I felt, but in the meantime, I started playing casuals, and so I got played, but I thought I would get that. So anyway, I applied for the job, and so did she. So I walk out of the store after my, application thing or interview or whatever it was, and then she walks up to me. She recognized me from the college. And she said, "Don't you go to LA State College?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Have you taken form and analysis?" It's a class, form and analysis. I said, "No, I haven't taken it yet." And she said, "If you don't take the class, I won't graduate." I said, "Okay." And that's how we met. And we spent a lot of time together that 6 months. During school, lunches and breaks and all of that sort of thing. And sometimes I collected unemployment insurance because I'd been working. So when I would drive to the unemployment office, she would ride with me. We spent a lot of time together. And towards the end of that, we started actually dating a little bit. Then in June, on June the 22nd, something came up and happened, and she came over and this and that and the other thing. Her parents kicked her out. Her mother was crazy. And, I mean, she was an insane person. And they kicked her out, and she came over to where I was living. We talked, and finally we said, "Well, let's go get married." And so we packed up and picked up my father, who was living with my sister in a city called Ontario. And so we picked him on the way and drove to Las Vegas, and he became the witness for our wedding. And in fact, I borrowed a wedding ring from my sister to give to Lee. I mean, it was a last minute thing, and besides which, I didn't have hardly any money anyway. So that's what we used as a wedding ring. So we get to Las Vegas the night of June the 22nd. And so one of the first things we did was call the rabbi, call the synagogue, to get the rabbi to marry us, okay? Well, he was out of town. He was on vacation. And so, okay, so we were already there. So we went to the courthouse to get a license. Well, by the time we got there to get the license, it was past midnight. So it was June the 23rd. And so we were married on June 23rd. And came back to LA and got ourselves an apartment and, and moved on from there. How much time we got as we speak?